As an avid enthusiast of the Acura MDX, I will say I was very intrigued by the new Mazda CX-90, which touts an all-new rear-biased all-wheel drive powertrain, an inline-six under the hood, and excellent driving dynamics. I really was intrigued. Today, I want to talk about if Mazda's all-new swanky CX-9 replacement is fit enough to fight against all of its established competition. Let's find out. This CX-90 in particular is a 2024 CX-90 Turbo S Premium Plus in rhodium white metallic. It's a very nice looking color and it really presents itself well. Because this one is a top spec model, it has the painted body cladding, which really looks better. Lower trims will have black fender cladding. When I first saw pictures of this, I do have to say I judged it a little bit too hard because in pictures the lights looked a little bit too small, but in person the look really comes together. The MSRP of this particular turbocharged egg is a hair under $62,000, and it's also right in line with the Acura MDX Advanced package, which has all the same bells and whistles, if not more, but this one has a more powerful engine. Of course, $62,000 is a lot of money, so if you're not looking for the most plush and opulent version of the CX-90, Mazda does offer the base 3.3 preferred model at just about $42,000. It's also interesting, it seems like the CX-90 competes with both segments, the mainstream segment like the Highlander and Pilot, but also the luxury segment like the X5 and the MDX. To cater to all those different niches, Mazda offers 8 trim levels for the CX-90. I tell you what, man, they love them dango trim levels. We start at the 3.3 Turbo Select, 3.3 Turbo Preferred, 3.3 Turbo Preferred Plus, 3.3 Turbo Premium, 3.3 Turbo Premium Plus, 3.3 Turbo S, which uses the higher output version of the 3.3, 3.3 Turbo S Premium, and finally, just like my guinea pig today, the 3.3 Turbo S Premium Plus. So many trim levels. So to be competitive, Mazda offers the CX-90 with several different power outputs. In this case, right now, you can only get a 6-cylinder CX-90. The normal CX-90 3.3 Turbo makes 280 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque, which are very competitive numbers compared to the Honda Pilot and also the Toyota Highlander with their 4 cylinders and V6s. And this powertrain, especially in Turbo S configuration, is evidence that Mazda wants to stick it to the powerful boys and the popular kids of the segment with this 3.3 liter turbocharged inline six. In this application, it makes a healthy 340 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. Very similar to the 3-liter turbo V6 in the Acura MDX Type S. This engine is also paired to a mild hybrid system which aids in a little bit of fuel economy, and you also get a little bit more response on the road. 0 to 60 for this 4,800 pound egg is about 6.5 seconds, but this engine really shines in its power delivery, so we'll talk about that later. It's paired to an 8-speed wet clutch automatic transmission, so it's not exactly a dual clutch, but it's not exactly torque converted either. These also use Mazda's iActive all-wheel drive system, and in this case, it is a rear bias system, and this engine is longitudinally mounted. In terms of MPGs, I've been actually pretty satisfied. Mazda claims 23 in the city, 28 on the highway, and a combined rating of 25. Me, with my slightly heavy foot, I've been getting about 21, 22 MPG. That's not bad at all. I have to say, I quite like the side profile of the CX-90. It is still competitive in this segment, being about 2 inches longer than the outgoing CX-9 and about an inch longer than the Honda Pilot, the outgoing Honda Pilot. But a big difference from those two SUVs and this SUV are the proportions. This one is way more rear drive looking with its longer front hood and its kind of hunched back sporty appearance. And again, it really fits this premium look very well with these 21-inch alloy wheels that are wrapped around 275 with tires, and that's square. No wonder this thing handles so well. To me, it seems this angle is part of a lot of controversy about the looks of this car, and particularly I think it's this A, B, C, D pillar over here. To me, it reminds me of an E60 BMW 5 Series wagon. I myself have grown to like it. At first, I wasn't that crazy about it. Let me know in the comments what you think about how the rear, or just how this whole car looks. I also appreciate that the taillights are full LED with an LED tail light, brake light, turn signal, and reverse light. That's very classy. Something else that's classy is, of course, this has a hands-free power tailgate. I actually don't have the key on me, but the tailgate is power. The rear window does not open. As you can see, trunk space behind the third row is actually pretty decent at 15 cubic feet of volume. It's not a huge improvement from the current CX-9, but it is an improvement. Underneath the floor, there's a little compartment with tools to jack the car up, and this one, because it has the trailer hitch, it has the receiver, but no ball, which is weird. Also on the passenger side, Mazda includes some power ports. There's a 12-volt power outlet that runs directly to the battery in the trunk, and there's also a 120-volt power outlet. Now, I know a lot of cars in this segment offer power folding third rows, and this is something that when I first saw this car, I will say I criticized, but it is way faster and way easier to just do this, drop the third row, and get 40 cubic feet of volume. And with all rows down, in this model, you can get up to 75 cubic feet of volume in your CX-90. This has a donut spare tire, and it is inside the car, so it can't get, well, it won't get as dirty. In terms of towing though, the CX-90 can tow up to 5,000 pounds, and this one, because it has the trailer package, has this hitch on it with a 7-pin trailer connector and a trailer brake controller. Thankfully, getting into the back of the CX-90 isn't that difficult. They give you a reasonable amount of space. The seat does slide forward, but if you have child seats, at least with this model that has the captain's chairs, I don't think that they can stay in the seat and slide at the same time. So I moved this middle seat to a position that I'd be sitting here comfortably, and I'm actually still sitting back here pretty comfortably as well. This is notably bigger than stuff like the Toyota Highlander, which, I mean, of course, this whole car itself is bigger, but I am actually pretty comfortable back here. The bottom of this is actually pretty nice, so I'm glad. I don't feel like I'm just sitting in the trunk of this car. I actually feel like I was thought of, not just because there's USB Type-C ports and air vents back here, but just because the seat itself is so comfortable. Usually third row seats are pretty hard, and the headrests are pretty nice as well. They're not that cardboard-like either. The third row seat in this is not heated and it doesn't recline, but again, I'm still pretty comfortable. There's 2 cup holders on each side for each third row passenger, and there's also no sunshades for the third row passengers. But besides that, it's actually pretty nice back here. I'm 5'9" and I have pretty decent amount of legroom. My feet do fit under the seat, but they only fit between the railing of the seat. So that is one thing. So your feet do get a little bit confined, but headroom, they did a good job because of the weird shape of this car. They managed to fit 5'9" people in the back of this. I think if you're 6 foot, you could fit in the back of this just about. So as we get into the second row of the CX-90, the wonderful accommodations only get better from here. Because this is a crossover, step-in height is super easy. We just slide on in, and as I close the door, a nice solid thunk. All the touch points feel very nice with the brushed aluminum trim and the gray looking wood, and even the suede on the door inserts. Both second row passengers have sunshades, also known as peasant blockers. I'm 5'9" again, and this second row seat is all the way back. They do slide forwards and backwards to give the third row passengers a little bit more space if you want. But with the driver's seat in my position and my seat all the way back, I have an insane amount of leg room. I can fit my feet under the seat, and I have decent headroom even with the pano moonroof. There's 2 map pockets on both sides of the seats, and behind the center console, there's 2 air vents and USB-C ports. I'm very glad that Mazda is using USB Type-C because it charges faster, and there's so many videos about why people like it. But underneath that, there's a third zone for the climate control. The second row seats are actually heated and cooled in this model, and they're very comfortable as well. They're very soft, and for being buckets, they're actually pretty supportive, but of course it's a one-size-fits-all type of car. There's this suede in the middle here with the Napa leather on the outside in this tan color. I actually like this color interior a lot. This one, of course, because they're the buckets, has this center console for the second row passengers, which is not removable. You can get a bench seat in lower trims of the CX-90. There's 2 big cup holders in the front here, which I don't think they'd fit a hydro flask type bottle, but you can fit drinks in there. There's also an interesting cubby in the front of that. The pièce de résistance about the back of this is the armrest. That's one thing. Very soft and very luxurious looking. It really looks like this was made to be in this car. But as we open the center console, there aren't any chargers in it because, of course, there's ports in the front here, but it's actually pretty deep. You could fit all kinds of things in there. I almost forgot to mention there's also 2 cup holders on each door panel for the rear passengers as well. Now for the most exciting seat of the house, the driver's seat. Again, considering that this is a crossover, it's pretty easy to get into, and the front doors, they don't rattle either. This car feels really well built. So in terms of price point for the materials that you touch, and also the way how the car feels when you drive it and when you use it, it actually does feel like a $60,000 car. This still uses Mazda's older key fobs. I mean, it works. It's Volvo-like because the buttons are on the side of it, but with this key fob, you have push button start, and you put your foot on the brake and push the start button to go, and you can listen to Mazda's new chime. Mazda really did a good job in terms of wow factor with this interior. The suede on the dash really is surprising. It looks nice, it feels nice. First of all, the steering wheel is Mazda's new 3-spoke leather-wrapped steering wheel. It seems like it has more of that stitching in the center of the wheel as well. Feels very nice to the hand, very sporty, and it's not too big. There's nice bolsters on it, and this one has paddle shifters on each side. There's also an assortment of buttons on the wheel. The left side of the wheel controls volume and audio controls, and that little info button scrolls through the little information screen in the gauges as well. And the right side, those buttons control cruise control and some of the safety features that the CX-90 offers. The horn has a good sounding horn, thankfully, and in terms of lights, the headlights are automatic, and also the windshield wipers on this model. This one also has a power tilt and telescoping steering column, and that means you have 2-person memory for the steering wheel, driver's seat, and the mirrors. As we look at the gauges, they're full digital on this model. You can configure them. There's 2 different layouts that you can use. There's this more safety-oriented one, which is okay, but I like the more analog and classic-looking design of the gauges on this one. I wish they did a little bit more with it, though, because if I push the info button, the only bit of configurability that you can do with this is the small iMid information screen in the gauges. But of course, when you switch drive modes from sport, towing, normal, and off-road, it does show an animation on the gauges, but that's really it. I appreciate that all 4 windows on this model are automatic, and this one has power folding mirrors, a feature that I quite like. Material quality in front is also pretty high. Everything that you feel feels great. The dash is soft touch, the door panels are soft touch, more of that wood trim here with that brushed aluminum trim down here, and the suede. There's a lot of suede everywhere. I just hope it holds up after a period of time, but only time will tell. As we move to the center, this one uses an all-new 12.3-inch partially touchscreen display, and I'll explain why it's partially touchscreen. It's only touchscreen in Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but the normal Mazda infotainment system still relies on the old joystick, which, I mean, it works. I've gotten used to it in all these Mazdas that I've been in the past few months. It's become a little bit more user-friendly as I've gotten to learn it, because there's not that much in here, and because of Apple CarPlay, it makes it super easy, and I can use it as a touchscreen there. I just wish that it was a touchscreen all the time. Compared to the competition, it's a little bit lacking in here, but if you put the car into reverse or drive, this has a backup camera. It's also interesting, this car beeps in reverse. But again, this has a backup camera with a 360 view as well. There's so many different views, even for the backup camera. And if you put the car into drive, there's even more views with the front camera. It's interesting though, the guidance lines only steer when you use the front camera, but not the backup camera. That's strange. Underneath the screen are the controls for the climate. Thank goodness they're all physical buttons, and all the nice clicky buttons as well. It's dual zone climate control up front here. It is automatic. The driver's seat and passenger seat are heated and ventilated just like the second row seats, and the steering wheel is heated as well. We can actually look at the seats though. They're actually pretty comfortable in this model, of course, because this is a more luxury oriented one. They're not that supportive, but for the type of car this is, they do a plenty fine job. You can, again, fit all kinds of people in here. The Nappa leather is extremely soft and supple. The driver's seat uses 8 ways with 2-way adjustable lumbar, which is a little bit underwhelming because other cars in this competition offer different ranges of motion, at least just for the driver's seat, like a thigh extension or a massage function or things like that to make you really feel like you're wooed in this car. This one feels like I'm in a normal Mazda. The passenger seat also uses 8 ways, but no lumbar and no other fancy creature comforts, again, besides the heating and ventilation. But as we move back to the center, you can see this new shifter, which is fully digital. Very weird in this model, but I've gotten used to it. I just wish that it worked like a normal shifter, like when you put the car in park, instead of pulling it up and left, which a lot of people, even me, I would forget. If it just went all the way up like a normal shifter, it would be much easier and much more intuitive, but it is better than some of the push button shifters in this segment. There's 2 cup holders, which are actually kind of small. On the right side of that, there's also a wireless charger and another power outlet over here. The center armrest itself is actually pretty soft, and it has more of that tan stitching in the middle, which looks very nice. But if we open it, it reveals 2 USB Type-C ports. The center console itself is actually pretty shallow. You really have to look at this in person because it is a little bit underwhelmingly small. But the glove box offers a reasonable amount of space. It's also felt lined and damped. This one, of course, also has a panoramic moonroof and other creature comforts like an auto-dimming rearview mirror, garage door home link, LED interior lights, which is a nice touch, sunglass holder, visors with lights and mirrors, and they do slide, so that is a nice accommodation. But now let's drive it. One of the first things to note about the CX-90 driving experience is the transmission. It works well, and when you're normally driving it, it works well, but as you're setting off, especially when the car is cold, so let's say first 20 minutes of the day, this thing kind of is a little bit herky-jerky. I don't know if it's a software thing. It doesn't feel like a hardware thing because the transmission actually works pretty decent, but it's just something to note. Something that kind of bothers me if I spent $60-some thousand, but let's put ourselves in sport mode. It's quick. It's not fast. As you can see, it's not like gonna make you scream and, things like that. But it actually is a very smooth and streamlined powertrain. The engine sounds good. It is something to get used to, the way how I expected, well, first of all, I expected this thing to be a little bit punchier, a little quicker than I thought it would. It has, I wouldn't say turbo lag, but the way how the turbo puts its power down is extremely linear. And that is a nice thing, something that I can appreciate. But I wish in sport mode, its mapping was a little bit more aggressive and tuned to have a little bit more fun. Get around here. This car also feels better when you're not flooring it. So, I mean, and 99% of the time, I'm sure most of the people that'll be driving this won't be flooring the thing anyway. But mid-range power is very strong. Like, this car won't feel underpowered at all. I wouldn't say this thing is slow at all, especially for the size and weight of it. It's actually pretty quick. Putting power down, it really puts its power down so smoothly. I'll put myself back in normal mode. There's a bit of a delay between drive modes, but that's the only thing I've noticed. I've also noticed that road noise, I mean, it seems like it's just a Mazda thing. I just hear a little bit more road noise than I would like. It's not like it's, 2008 Honda Fit loud, but you can hear a little bit of the road. I don't mind it that much though, because of the tires that are on this that are made to grip and perform in all seasons. I've even driven this in pouring rain and it still feels extremely sure-footed and extremely dense. Normally when you're not flooring the thing all the time, the engine, as you can see, is actually pretty quiet. It just hums along because the thing has so much power, and the boost and the mild hybrid system, all of those in conjunction keep the revs pretty low most of the time. When setting off, if you take off a little bit too gingerly with this car, you can feel the clutches engage. That's when it's a little bit herky-jerky. It's interesting, this car likes to be driven a little bit harder or spiritedly. Like when you take off with some authority, not like you have to be racing all the time, but it's just a little bit better when you're giving it more throttle. Passing power on the highway. This thing has the best power on the highway. It is most suited for that, I will say. This is another reason to like the CX-90. On the highway, it always has power on tap. I've not had an instant where I've been like, come on, shift down, or anything like that. It's very eager to shift down. It's smooth when it shifts up. Another thing that I've learned while living with this, again with the transmission, is that it doesn't like stop and go. Like if you have to softly accelerate, it's not that smooth at engaging the clutches to do so. So again, that adds to that little herky-jerkiness. While you're moving, once the car is moving, it is smooth. You barely notice the transmission. I mean, of course I know when it shifts, but you barely feel the shifts. It's very refined in that regard, but at low speeds, that's where I wish it was a little bit more refined. We're gonna see how the power is. This also has front cross traffic alert, but let's see. Sometimes the transmission does lag. Most of the time it takes off, but there are some times where I've noticed some lag. So again, I really encourage you to test drive this thing, and not just a little test drive. I would drive this thing maybe 25-30 minutes in different scenarios to see if you'd get tired of it. Overall, I think the CX-90, especially in this trim, is an absolutely fabulous SUV. I'm very curious to try out lower models as time goes by, but I really think this, especially in Turbo S Premium Plus trim, puts the MDX up for its money. It's not completely there yet because it does lack some refinement in the transmission, but the engine is fantastic, and the transmission, when it does want to work properly, shifts beautifully and quickly, and it really is a dream to drive on the road. If you're looking at upgrading from a CX-9 to a CX-90, I would say I recommend it. But let me know in the comments if you have a CX-90 already and how it's treated you, and how many miles have you put on it so far. I'm very curious about longevity with these things. But enough rambling. Thank you all for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Again, I hope you enjoyed this up-close and personal look at the all-new Mazda CX-90, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, peeps.